So my hope today is to give you a short synopsis and summary of the key takeaways of this article. The topic in question is, how long does it really take to regain losses after you've had gains? Because this is a big topic in question. We hear all these phrases like, you can invest over long periods of time, losses are smoothed out, and you can ignore the fact that markets have corrections or bear markets, because over the long term, the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ always goes up. And while that's true, it oversimplifies a very complex subject. And so my goal today is to take snippets of Lance's article here, full of charts and all the data points, which I highly encourage you, and I'll link to this article, I highly encourage you to actually go in, read it, take a look. If you can get yourself through all the charts and numbers, you'll be well rewarded for the time. But my goal is to give you a quick 2-minute synopsis and show you a real live example. So let's create a hypothetical scenario here and say you invest from 2009 to the end of 2021 and have a cumulative gain of 800%. All right, and then in our hypothetical scenario, you have a 50% drawdown from there. What's the real result? The problem with percentages, that when you have a 50% correction, it doesn't leave you with a 650% gain. You're not taking your 700% gain and subtracting 50% from there. What you're doing is taking your 50% reduction off of the total value of your portfolio, which reduces your gain to somewhere around 350%. So you can see here that a loss after a series of gains is way, way more impactful. As shown in the example, the small drawdown seems innocuous until you realize that it clipped a certain amount of points from the index. In Lance's example, it's 4,000 points. And the problem now becomes the issue of regaining those 4,000 lost points just to break even. So now you've lost all this, you have to figure out how much time do I have to put back in just to break even with what I lost. And then, as is always the case, the math of loss matters over the long term. Such is why, after 3 major bull market cycles since 1980, most Americans are woefully unprepared for retirement. This was a quote straight from Lance's article. I fully agree with this sentiment. There are tons of statistics that show that Americans are completely unprepared for financial independence, whether it's at retirement age or before. We're not hitting our goals that we've set out to achieve. And yet we're flooded with messages like, just invest over the long term. You can scroll through Instagram and find all these charts that show if you invest $20 a month into this at 10% growth, it'll be this amount by the end. The issue is, if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it. And if everyone was doing it, we wouldn't have a problem or a need for financial advisors, or even a problem with looming issues of retirement. The investing lessons that investors have yet to learn is that capital preservation matters most in achieving long-term financial goals. Capital preservation is limiting your drawdowns and not being sucked into the hype of the upturns. And then finally, time matters. When investors lose money in the market, it is possible to regain the lost principal given enough time. However, that's the rub. We can never recover the time lost to reach our financial goals. So what we want to do is have a more active approach potentially and smooth out those drawdowns, or be more proactive and not just say, oh, let's close our eyes or put our head in the sand like ostriches and just ignore the fact that the markets are going to go down, because it smooths out over time. So I want to give you a quick real world example. This is actual numbers. So whoops, this is supposed to say S&P 500 because this is S. So in January 3rd, 2022, the S&P index hits a high of 4796. And here's 3 hypothetical scenarios. You have a drawdown of 10%, 20%, or 30%. Right? These numbers don't matter, but I have this up here because if anyone wants to see the source numbers here, they can, so they can verify that my math is correct. If you have a 10% decline, you need an 11.11% of growth to recover. If you have a 20% decline, you need a 25% period of growth to recover. And if you have a 30% decline, you need 42.86% of growth to recover. And as you can see, it's not linear. So when you lose 10%, you don't need to just gain 10% to gain it back. If you lose 30%, you don't need to gain only 30% to gain it back. It's logarithmic. The final part of this is if you look at the average return of the S&P 500 since 1957, which is 10.67%, how long do you need to recover your loss? Well, when it's small loss, it doesn't take as much time, but when it's a big loss, it takes a long time. So for a 10% decline, you need 1.04 years to recover. Not such a big deal. When it's 20%, you need 2.34 years to recover. When it's 30%, you need 4.02, and you can imagine that if we drew this chart down further with 40%, 50% declines, as are possible in certain bear markets, the length of time extends outwards. Anyway,